Hey there, welcome. I'm Amrita from Artria Jewelry, and today I'm going to show you some new designs of necklaces that I've made here. This is a necklace with these beautiful ceramic beads, and it loved the earthy greens and the earthy browns. So what I did with that is accent each of the beads with these copper knots. And then I finished the necklace with the whole knotted chain all the way up. And so this is an 18-inch necklace. And this really does fall well and it accents these beads. It gives it its due. So I love this one. And in the same style, I started working on these. So these are works in progress right now, but I wanted to show you what they look like and how I'm combining these different beads. And then we will work on a project together in the rest of this video. So this was a handmade bead, one of a kind, and I really liked it. So I wanted to bring out those blues and greens, and I used these flat oval beads for the rest of the chain. And the way these have been designed, the necklace itself won't be heavy, but it makes a statement. So this is in the front, typically between your collarbones, and then you can have the chain the rest of the way. Similarly, here is a beautiful purple glass beads for the necklace. And then the pendant is a glass bead. Look at that beautiful shine in there. That's gorgeous. I think it's silver lined inside. And then this is a ceramic hand painted bead. And for this, I finished off the drop with a tri-leaf headpin. Here is another one with a handmade bead as the accent bead. And then to bring out those colors, these bluish green flat oval beads. And then lastly, there is this beautiful bead which has some gold foil in there. Again, beautiful lampwork bead. And then a couple more lampwork beads up there with the gold tone of this one, and then some blue flat oval beads here. Now all of these are linked with these handmade knots, and we're going to make these knot beads together. Now in a recent video, I showed you this bracelet that I picked up from a consignment store. I really liked these lovely beads in here, the lampwork beads. So what I thought I'd do is use these beads and we'll make a necklace like one of these. So I'm going to talk about the materials and the tools, and then we'll get started. So for materials, you will need beads of your choice, typically 5, 7, or 9 beads, with one of the ones in the middle being the accent bead. I'm using the beads from this bracelet. You will also need 20 gauge copper wire. I have a bundle here that I've pre-antiqued, but you can use bright copper wire and antique it later, or leave it bright if that's what you like to do. And then you will need 18 gauge copper wire. And if you're not making the knots all the way through the necklace like I did here, because that takes a lot of time and effort, and if you're trying to sell this, that can get pretty expensive. So if you want, you could just do this and attach chain. So that's what I'm going to do with this one. But you could use the same knotting technique all the way through the back to make a full knotted chain. Copper chain, you could do 14 to 18 inches depending on the length you like. Here I have 4 mm cable chain. Tools you will need: bent nose or chain nose pliers, 6-step looping pliers or bail making pliers, a pair of flush cutters, a metal or jeweler's file, a pair of needle nose or tweezer nose pliers, and a ruler. So here's the bracelet that we are going to upcycle. I'm going to cut the cord that's holding all the beads. There we go. And then I'm going to put all of these tiny beads into this tray. These triangle trays are really handy. I have them linked in the description below. I'm not sponsored by that company at all. I just find these trays really handy for projects like this when I'm taking things apart and keeping my beads separately and then pouring them back into different containers or Ziploc bags. So that's why I'm recommending them. And I have a whole stack of them. These are just a few right here that I use. And there, I'm going to set that aside. And then we're going to pick out the beads I want to use. So this is going to be that center accent bead or the pendant, like that. And then I'm going to, this is a single one, so we could, instead of that, we could have that as a single drop and have the blues and the greens. So that could be one necklace, or we could have that and have these be the blues and the greens for the rest of the necklace. And this can be kept aside for another project. What do you think? I think this would make a nice necklace, don't you think? Yeah, let's do that. Okay. So first we're going to work on the accent pendant. For that, I'm going to make a knotted head pin. So right here, if you see, I have a knot at the bottom, and then I get that up here and make a knot, a loop and a knot on the top. So we're going to make that knotted head pin first. So you need about 2 inches of wire to make that knotted head pin. But if you want to make a knot on the top, maybe cut yourself about 6 inches and that'll give you some play. I'm going to take my 6-step looping pliers, and around the first step, I'm going to make 3 coils. So look how I'm lining that up right next to each other. I'm going to do that 3 times. And then I'm going to bring the wire up over and then pass it all the way through the hole in there. Now I'm using a slightly longer wire, and hence that's what's going to show up, but you're going to make that loop into a knot. And we can use our pliers to help finagle that knot together. Hold that, swing it, and we can get that in place. And there we have the knot completed. And we're going to slide the bead on. I will look for beads similar to these and link them in the description down below if you want to make a similar necklace, but you could also use beads that you might have lying around. Now I want to have a knot on the top too, so I want to leave enough space to make those wraps. So what I'm going to do is take my looping pliers, and around that 3rd step I'm going to bend the wire over, so that'll give us a couple of millimeters there to make that loop. And then around that same 3rd step I'm going to make a loop. Then I'm going to switch to my pair of chain nose or bent nose pliers, hold that loop in place, and now start wrapping all the way down to the pendant and then back. And your wraps don't have to be perfect on this. It is, the whole idea with this is to have this messy knot. So it's a kind of chaotic wrap. So have fun with that. And then once you get to one of the ends, either closer to the pendant or right up here by the loop, you will snip that wire off and tuck it in. And there we go. Our accent pendant is ready. Now this itself could make a beautiful necklace. You just put this pendant on a chain and you're done. But we are making a statement necklace, so we're going to keep going. So now that we have this pendant done, we're going to make the links for each of these. So if you can see here, I've made individual knots, and then through these pendants, I've just used the 18 gauge copper wire to make simple loops. So I'm going to take my 18 gauge copper wire, flush cut the end, slide the bead on. I'm going to use the first step of the looping pliers to make a lollipop loop, and then hold close to the join and swing the wire back to center the loop, and then slide the bead up. And we're going to do the same on the other end. Bend it over, make the loop, center it, and then snip the wire off. There we go. And just make sure your loop closes. So we're going to do that with each of the beads. Flush cut the end. Slide the bead on. Use the first step to make a P-loop and center it by pulling back near the join. Slide the bead, bend the wire over 45 degrees, wrap around the smallest step, and then flush cut the loop. Okay, so it looks like the hole on this last bead is really small on one side, so I can't get my 18 gauge wire through it. I'm going to try the 20 gauge wire. So that works well. So maybe for this last one, I will just do a knot instead of doing these simple loops. And so we'll just make those knots on top. So to do that, we're going to leave about 2 inches of that wire, bend that over, and then turn it around itself to make that loop, and then just do a few wraps. I'm going to do 3 wraps. And then keep wrapping it on itself. 20 gauge is too thin to be able to just do a simple loop like that, which is why I'm doing the full wrap. But if you don't have that problem where your beads has a really small hole, you can just make these simple loops like we did. And there we go. We kind of cheated the system a little bit here. We, worked around what we were given, and we've made the bead work. So there we go. Wrap around that. and then wrap. Six, 7, 8. There we go. Now I just do the same thing with the other green bead. There we go. There we go. So I have all the beads ready. We initially had this like that. The other option, so this is a leaf pattern. This is an abstract wavy bead. So we could use that, or I could use the blue wavy bead and then flip this around and make an asymmetric layout. But I think this looks prettier. Okay, we're going to do this. We'll stick with that. So now we're going to make these knotted beads. To do that, again, I'm working straight off the spool. Leave about an inch, inch and a half. Go around. And then we're going to wrap that bead. And this is going to be the length of the bead. So the number of wraps I get here approximately is that length of the bead. And then we are going to bend that over and make this other loop. There we go. And then we're going to go back over it. So I'm going to close that off, cut that up, and push that in there. So there we have one bead done. And we're going to have that bead between each of these fancy glass beads. So I'm going to keep going. Enjoy the music while we do that. Now for this center piece, I'm going to slide this pendant on to that 20 gauge wire. Let that go all the way back there. And if you're using pre-cut wire, you can attach it later. I'm going to again give myself about 1.5 inches. Make a knot on this side. And so this, I'm just making those wraps cleanly. And then slide the bead back up. And then I'm going to leave about that same length on this side. And then we're going to make a loop on this side too. And I'm going to wrap that. We're going to snip that off. Now all that's left to do is connect these things up. So I'm going to open this, just that open as a jump ring, attach one end of this and close that out. This bead slipped off, so we're going to slide that back on and then twist this side open. Careful when you're working with the glass beads, you don't want to pull your metal against it and chip the ends. And then just to make sure this anchors in between, you can fold that wire up a little bit just to give it that little bend there. And then that's how it will sit. There we go. And then connect the rest of it. So the knot, close that out. Knot, and do that. And connect that. Now to connect it to this green one up here, I'm going to use a tiny jump ring. So I'm going to use that 18 gauge copper wire and make a couple of small jump rings. So you're going to use that smallest step and make a coil. And snip that off. So that's one jump ring. And flip, flat cut that, and the second jump ring. And I'm only doing that because we had to make a different knot with this one, and so I didn't have a way of opening that, but that's the only change here. There we go. One side is all connected and done. We're going to do the other side. There we go. Our statement part of the necklace is all done. Now all we have to do is attach some chain and finish it off with an iron hook clasp. So I'm going to use again 18 gauge copper wire to make that iron hook clasp. I'm going to use my first step of the looping pliers to make that P-loop, and then use the third step to make the eye and flush cut that. And then for the hook, we're going to do the same thing, but instead of making it a loop, we're going to make it a hook. So again, P-loop, and then instead of closing that off as a loop, we're cutting this into a hook. And I'm going to bend that up. There we go. And then for the hook, I'm just going to file it. There we go. Smooth there. And then to connect this to the chain, I'm going to need 2 small jump rings. So I'm going to do that. Around the first step like we did earlier. See how I'm trying to use up all the scraps of wire so I don't have that much wastage. So now you have to throw away that little bit. I'm going to measure out. We have the jump rings ready. We have the closures ready. We're going to measure out this part of the necklace. I want the necklace itself to be about 18 inches long. So this one, this is 8 inches. So we want 5 inches more on either side for the chain, and then we'll add the closure, and we can also add a couple of extra links if needed to make it adjustable, but I think 18 inches is good. So here I'm going to cut 10 inches of this chain. We can cut that in half. And then use the jump rings to attach it to the necklace. There we go. And then close that jump ring off. I'm going to do the same on the other side. And close that off. And then all that's left to do is attach our hook and eye closure. I'm going to put the hook on one side of the chain. Close that. And then the eyelet on the other side. And twist that close. And That's how they will hook up right there. And that's how they will clasp right there. So I found that this is sliding too much for my liking. So I'm going to go back in with the wire and wrap around to keep that secured in the middle. I'm just going to cut about 6 inches of that 20 gauge wire. And then kind of keep that on there in the center and do one wrap on each side. Just trapping that pendant in the center of those wraps. There we go. So I'm just going to do some chaos wrap here. And then do that on the side too. And tuck that wire in. I'm going to cut that on this side. And there we go. So that way it's kind of anchored in the middle of that wrap and doesn't slide around as much. Okay, there we go. So now we have a completed statement necklace. If you like this video, please like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Have a beautiful day.